Okay, we just have to talk about the rank 1 Tristana player. This person hard carries his lobbies and challenger elo, completely ignoring the meta, one-tricking Tristana all the way. I've said in a number of Tristana videos before that Tristana is the perfect solo queue marksman, and this Tristana one trick finally proves it. He's currently ranked at about 1000 LP Challenger, not only being the highest ranked Tristana OTP, but also higher ranked than any marksman one trick in the game. Higher than all Samira one tricks, all Draven one tricks, you name it. And this is a very important proof of concept for the large crowd of marksman players out there who believe that the ADC role would be weak and that they'd have to rely on their random solo queue teammates. This player shows us that, at least for the champion Tristana, the exact opposite is the case. Spamming Tristana, the rank 1 player always has a massive winning impact, all while usually playing against multiple professional players on the enemy team in any given lobby. Just by design, Tristana has all the right qualities needed to excel in solo queue, and the theory behind it is not even that complicated, and in this video we will break down everything. I'll show you the rank 1 player's runes and items, which are very straightforward and easy to copy, and then go over his Tristana game plan with you, which is also not that complicated. This would already be enough information to try the champion yourself right away, but for those of you who want to see more, I will then even show you a full game from start to finish, showcasing this Tristana player. So the video format effectively stays the same as always, but there's just an extra full game analysis in addition to that. Just felt like experimenting with the format, so let me know how you like it. And as per usual, I am making these videos for people who take solo queue seriously and want to become better players themselves. And while for some of you these videos are already enough to improve, for those of you who are really determined to climb to high elo, I recommend the coaching service from my sponsor Solo Queue Solution. It is a simple concept. Solo Queue Solution will connect you to a challenger coach who works with you in private one-on-one coaching sessions. In these sessions, the coach will identify your strengths and weaknesses as a player and then provide you with actionable steps to turn those weaknesses in your gameplay into strengths as well. League of Legends is a skill, and any skill can be taught and learned. It just works. The coaches from Solo Queue Solution have helped many players to climb from Heartstack Silver all the way to Diamond with their Coaching to Diamond program. Of course, a private teacher can only help you if you also put in effort to implement what you learn, but if you play at least 15 hours of solo queue per week, you already meet the criteria for that. So if you truly want to take your game to the next level, you can book your first coaching session right away with a link in the description, and now the advertisement is over. Alright, the rank 1 player, link to his profile in the description as well by the way, uses the following Tristana rune page. He takes Hail of Blades, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection and Relentless Hunter with Legend Bloodline and Triumph secondary. Hail of Blades has always been a very strong Tristana keystone. Especially during the early stages of the game, Tristana is a burst champion. She wants to combo off with her E. Hail of Blades makes that more consistent throughout the entire game, but especially during the early game where you don't have much attack speed, this rune ensures you still get to max stacks with your E. The combo is very simple. You W forward, you E the enemy while you're mid-air, and ideally your W also connects adding 1 stack already, and then you unload your 3 Hail of Blades auto attacks stacking to 4. This burst combo is pretty much impossible to outdamage for most marksman champions. Now Taste of Blood is very straightforward. Tristana has short range, so she's easily punished for last hitting. However, with your E passive, which explodes in a radius, you easily trigger Taste of Blood and to get some health back. Strong rune during the early game, and it really makes lane easier. Eyeball Collection is just your standard rune in the next slot for snowballing, providing more adaptive force, but Relentless Hunter is a little interesting. You could also pick Treasure Hunter here, but the rank 1 player always goes for Relentless Hunter. Tristana doesn't have the best movement speed even with boots, which doesn't really matter in combat because you get your W resets there, but out of combat, Relentless Hunter makes rotations much easier for you. Being in the right place at the right time is just very valuable in League of Legends. Now the secondary runes are for sustain. Legend Bloodline of course only fully kicks into gear during the late game, but there it does a lot of work, especially since you don't typically buy a lifesteal item. And Triumph is just amazing for Tristana period because of her W resets. You want to keep fighting, you want to all in, and Triumph keeps you alive during those fights. However, the rank 1 player does not go for this rune page every single game. There's also a late game variation. In this other rune page he swaps Hail of Blades for lethal tempo and Taste of Blood for cutdown. Without Hail of Blades, you are of course significantly weaker during the early game and less consistent with your E-combos, but your late game with Lethal Tempo and Cutdown is nothing short of amazing. In the past, this player has used the Lethal Tempo rune page a little bit more, but nowadays he gravitates more towards the Hail of Blades page, and when you look at the match history, it's almost every game with Hail of Blades. However, this Lethal Tempo rune page is also viable. Alright, but now to the item build, and this is even more straightforward. You always start with Thorin's Blade and you get early Berserker's Greaves, and your two core items are Kraken Slayer and Navori Quickblades. Always, every single game. Kraken Slayer is just way too strong on Tristana. It builds out of Noonquiver, which is a perfect component for the lane phase, and the 3 hits for the physical damage trigger also works perfectly in your all-in combo. Additionally, during the late game you can just attack the closest target with Kraken Slayer autos, and you will do so much work for your team without needing to risk much. When you then also add Navori Quickblades into the mix, you also unlock permanent Q buff, because every single auto attack refunds your cooldowns and Q doesn't cost mana, so you can keep pressing Q over and over. These 2 items alone are usually all Tristana needs. However, you still need to scale into the late game, and for this you get Lord Dominic's Regards and Phantom Dancer. Lord Dom's counters armor and tanks in general, and also every single champion gains a lot of armor just by leveling up, so Lord Dom's will also be good against squishies. Phantom Dancer makes you more consistent with your auto attacks, giving you more Navori Quickblades refunds and also more Kraken Slayer triggers. The movement speed is also very valuable, and the ramping attack speed is super good in teamfights even without Lethal Tempo. Now the last item slot is usually Bloodthirster, but depending on the matchup you can also pick more of Malmortius or Guardian Angel. Alright, with that being said, let's have a look at how the rank 1 player plays the early game. Playing against a poke lane like Xayah Vel'Koz is arguably the most difficult matchup for Tristana. The reason is that, as an all-in champion, you cannot really follow your own game plan if the enemy manages to chunk you down. You need your HP total high so you can actually commit to your all-in plays without just dying yourself before you can do anything meaningful. Additionally, Tristana has rather short attack range during the early game, whereas poke champions tend to have really long range with their abilities. Challenger opponents will of course take full advantage of this, and it really shows. Tristana is half HP, and for the most part you'll just be playing for your late game scaling in such matchups, which is still excellent as you know, so even in games like this you'll get plenty of opportunities to make stuff happen later on. However, due to your W jump, you still have an amazing follow-up game should you get a gank from your jungler, so even in bad matchups you can make stuff happen in lane. Yes, against good poke players you are unfortunately quite relying on jungle pressure, but keep in mind that poke lanes are also very attractive for your jungler because poke champions tend to be immobile and therefore helpless in these situations. This also means that, whenever you find yourself in lane with full HP, you can easily force the all-in yourself with your W engage. Immobile champs are vulnerable to all-ins, and especially in lower elo you'll be able to catch them quite easily. With E and Hail of Blades, resetting your W is almost guaranteed, so one opening is usually enough to convert into a kill. Against opposing all-in lanes, everything will be a lot more straightforward though. The enemy wants to all-in you, but you also want to all-in the enemy, so you don't mind at all. As a result, these lanes are extremely snowbally, which is to say Tristana is very likely to snowball, since your E with Hail of Blades is one of the strongest early all-in tools in the game. Just make sure you never are the one getting caught by opposing engage spells, and you should be good to go. Once the snowball starts rolling, there is no stopping it. Your jump gives you a lot of effective engage range, which makes it almost trivial to completely deny the enemy the early game should you manage to get ahead in lane. All-in versus all-in is inherently chaotic, but as long as you dodge enemy CC, Tristana is the one who will thrive in that chaos. Okay, now this matchup is, in my opinion, the most intricate when you play against scaling bot laners. And the reason for this is the dynamic. Tristana wants to all-in and snowball, but the enemy ADC tries to sit back and scale. Additionally, their support will try to peel for them, using their tools to counter your engage and stop you from creating all-in situations. It is very easy to get frustrated and impatient in these lanes, which can lead to poor decision making, leaving you wide open for the enemy to punish. The golden rule here is, don't try to force plays too hard. You must wait for an opening first, such as the enemy wasting important disengage tools, or your support landing a promising engage on which you can easily follow up with W and E. Against good players this might never happen, so you just have to scale alongside them, which brings us to Tristana's late game. In the late game there are two kinds of relevant fighting scenarios. Of course one of them is the full team fight, and we'll talk about that in a second, but there are also small skirmishes and pick situations, and here Tristana is as simple as it gets. Your burst damage with E, Kraken and Quick Blades is absurd. But that was the easy part, because it is very similar to all-ins during the lane phase. When it comes to fully stacked teamfights, however, you have to adopt a very different playstyle to see success. The rank 1 player is a lot more careful with his jump now, and he has to be. Please have a close look at Tristana's W usage. The key takeaway is, you hold your W for defensive purposes, just using your passive auto-attack range to deal damage safely. This makes it very difficult for the enemy to catch you, and you can still use W resets at the end to clean up. One exception would be if your team lands a truly godlike engage. Here you are of course more than encouraged to W forward immediately, just like during the lane phase. Just be careful not to get baited, so you only follow up like this when an opening is actually there. When you jump as your team tries to disengage, for example, you'd likely just die. But yeah, that's the rank 1 Tristana player's game plan, and you can try it yourself right away. But for those of you who want to see more, you are invited to stick around and watch a full game from the rank 1 Tristana start to finish. And here we are right in the replay, Tristana Nautilus against Caitlyn Lux. So against a poke lane, which is, as I've said, an interesting lane, because if the poke lane manages to get Tristana Nautilus low, they can't really all in, so they really need to make that count. Also, most of the time this player goes for Exhaust and Flash, not Cleanse and Flash, as in this game. The hook lands right away. Small follow-up with E plus autos, very nice. You usually start E, you only start W in a level 1, well, you don't level a skill at all, but wait. So if a level 1 fight happens and you need to follow up with W resets, you do that, but for the most part you just walk to lane and then put a point in E. But as I've said, this can be quite nasty if, well, if red team gets the hooks, then everything's nice, but if blue team gets their poke, then, well, as I've said, all-ins are really dangerous all of a sudden for the all-inning team, for Tristana Nautilus. And Tristana respecting the Caitlyn Lux chain CC, you know, the bind into trap, so much that they didn't take Exhaust this game, but instead opted for Cleanse. And Viego is pathing bot side-ish. The wave's heavily under tower. Terrible spot for Tristana because she can't really last hit there, but level 2 is all she needs. She has jump, she has E. Viego is technically ready. Ooh, okay. That was not good. He got caught and Jax was right there. Okay, that was a major setback. It looked like they set up a beautiful gank there, but that didn't happen. So as you can see, Tristana's really suffering here, being 200 HP. And especially in these challenger lobbies, the enemy will know how to play. They will take advantage of their range, poke you down, and then you kind of have to suffer through the early game, which kind of sucks. But it doesn't really matter too much. Tristana is not a Draven or a Kalista, a champion who needs to snowball early to make things happen. Tristana has the insurance with her passive. She can essentially play the late game like a Caitlyn or a Jinx, just stand at range and fire your auto attacks. In any case, Tristana out of her potion, almost no HP, so all inning here is pretty much impossible. but the plan here is to just soak up as much experience as possible and... Oh, bother. Okay, what a play. What a play. They greeted for the Nautilus. Okay, that was super... Well, I'll say that was lucky for the Tristana, that the enemy were greedy like this. But, I mean, we take those. But in general, in a situation like this, the game plan would be to wait for an opportunity to reset. Yes, you will bleed some CS, but you reset, get some components, get to full health most importantly, and then you start over again essentially at full HP. You can, well, look for all-ins, and as soon as you buy boots, you can also dodge the skill shots a little more efficiently. So this early stage of lane phase, the level 1, 2, or until the first base, will be the most difficult in the poke matchups. And yeah, as I've said, the main reason is boots, because with boots you can you're so much harder to hit with the skill shots, and it really shows, as we will see when we return to lane here. And by the way, as you know, I do have my main League of Legends account. I pretty much only play Misfortune on there, but I also have another account for testing. I usually just fool around with stuff, testing new Misfortune builds or play champions I want to try out. And it's usually hovering around low-ish Emerald. But I played a couple games of Tristana after analyzing this rank 1 player, and it's actually ridiculous. I shot up on the Smurf account to Diamond 3, almost Diamond 2 by now. And it's just so ridiculous. Look at this all-in power. One single mistake, and you just get them. As I've said, once you're full HP, the poke laners are immobile. They can't really fight back once you're close up. And they can't play with their range anymore. The jump gap closes, zone breaks, as you would say in fighting games. Anyway, Tristana jump, beautiful tool for solo queue with the reset. It's, especially since you can reset it with E and Hail of Blades, it's such a non-committal option. You just get in there, and you're not even punishable if you manage to get your cooldown back. And as we can see, Tristana instantly, usually if you look at the match history from this player, usually they finish Noon Quiver first before upgrading boots, but because you are in a poke lane, and because movement speed is so important, boots was the first purchase in order to deal with their skill shots. And Nautilus is still ready here. By the way, we won't rewind here. I won't turn this into a I don't know, watered down version of the concise guides part of the video. I will just watch the replay right through, just like with a live game. There's no rewinding. We will just let this sink in, let the events unfold, and yeah, I'll of course comment as we go, as you hear. But yeah, just so you know what I'm doing here. But yeah, the thing is, people tend to, I don't want to say complain, but some of them say in these guides, hey, you missed out on this part, or you didn't mention that, and stuff like that. And just going over a full game gives me the opportunity to address this. And of course, I mean, the rest of the video stays exactly the same as, or the same structure as usual, so it shouldn't bother anyone who isn't interested in the full game watch through. But it's just for those people who want some more information on the pick, on the champion, on the player in question. But yeah, of course, all feedback is welcome. And yeah, Tristana now with the Noon Quiver. In fact, Kraken Slayer is a very big first power spike once you get it, but also just the Noon Quiver. From playing the pick myself, I realized that, well, sometimes, I mean, your E passive is very good for pushing, but sometimes it can mess up your last hit timings. But with Noon Quiver you have such lenient... Oh goodness, okay, Cleanse coming in clutch here. With Noon Quiver you have such lenient timings that you can still get all the last hits, even if you have to finish the minions with the, and trigger your E passive at inconvenient times. But yeah, Noon Quiver really helps with that. But of course, attack speed early also super important, because if your Hail of Blades on cooldown and your Q, I mean, you're pretty much guaranteed to trigger your E to full stacks between Hail of Blades, your Q, and the attack speed items. So yeah, at this point it's relatively safe to get this consistently. But on the topic of summoner spells, here we just saw how important Cleanse can be and how much work it can put in fact. But Exhaust is so nice on this pick, especially in those bot lane 2v2s. I've had it happen in my games every now and then that we get an engage on one of the two, or on the support, on the lower damage threat. So you still jump forward and E and all in the crowd controls target, in that case the support, but you can still just simultaneously press Exhaust on the AD carry, and they just sit there and can't do anything to counter your all in. It's a really, really potent spell on Tristana for these all in situations, but Cleanse does have its places in some matchups, as we can see. I'm currently exclusively just going Exhaust Flash though, because I really like that. That was expensive, that costs 60% health. Failing the jump happens. But yeah, that jump fail was actually a little even more costly, because now they can't even base. It's fine, I mean, Honey Fruit will do the trick for now. And this is actually a very nasty gank angle. Oh, they're so overextended. Two immobile poke champions. They thought they're in the clear because Tristana was low, but look at this. After the Honey Fruit, she has enough health for the all-in, and here she goes, and Lux is no match. Caitlyn also hopelessly overextended. Yeah, this is exactly the dynamic with the poke lane. They can chunk you down, which makes things awkward in the very early game, but as soon as they're slightly out of position, they just can't really counter that. It's and from that point, it's just free kills left and right. And Tristana, another thing I really learned to appreciate when playing her for a while in solo queue now. She does such a good job at taking towers, damaging towers, pushing waves. As you know, towers win games. You can't really well, make progress if you only get kills, quote-unquote only, and then leave the map as it is. You really have to make it count and deal damage to the enemy structures. And Tristana with her E and attack speed does it quite well compared to other AD carries, and that really goes a long way in solo queue. Especially when you get these early snowbally kills, if you instantly take the towers right after. It's not only good progress, but it's also super demoralizing for the enemy team. You very frequently get early surrenders from them, or you just finish early. Just the other game I played, we pushed the towers so fast. I mean, usually it's still a very grindy game when you take an inhibitor pre-20, and the enemy can hold back, farm super minions a little bit, turtle in their base. Against Tristana, it's not really gonna work. You're just going to a different lane, and before they even can respond, you just E4 shotted the tower and dealt so much damage to it. I mean, the damage is already done then. You can jump away, they can't even catch you. It's just very good for progress making in solo queue. But especially, I mean, in coordinated play, you usually have every teammate on the same page and they know we need to go as 5 and push that lane, push that tower. And then it's no problem for any champion, really. But Tristana, if you sometimes have to make stuff happen by yourself, or just with your support, or your jungler, or what have you, it's a really big deal, the fact that you can just take down towers like that. Anyway, in this game we're still in lane phase. Tristana on 4 kills, full Kraken Slayer. I mean, as we saw, once the poke lane makes even slight mistakes, or I mean, those were not slight mistakes, but once they start messing up, or misjudge even a single situation, it really shows. They instantly die, and now we have such a massive item advantage for Tristana already. I mean, of course, Noto is also a good combo. I am excuse me. I personally think that it is always good to have a support on a similar game plan, or even the same game plan as you, just so you don't have to awkwardly coordinate, as it is the case with some matchups. For example, Tristana really likes these early all-ins, but I think it's a little bit more awkward when you have like a Soraka next to you, who can't really create these situations. But still, very effective pick in any matchup. As we see from this player's profile, they pick it every single game effectively. I mean, there's on this account there are like 400 Tristana games and, I don't know, 1 Vayne game or what have you. So yeah, truly a one-trickable pick, and it has the results to back it up. Challenger 1000 LP speaks for itself in solo queue. But yeah, in this game, we are, or I mean, the Tristana is obviously massively in the lead, and the tower will go down. I intentionally looked for a replay that, I mean, I didn't watch the game beforehand, but I of course looked at the summary of the game, and I chose one that didn't look like a stomp. But right now, this looks rather stompy, I have to admit. 3-9. But at least bot lane, or enemy bot lane tower is still standing. Oh, that's dangerous. If that hook lands, that's a dead Caitlyn. Yeah, for sure. Ooh, okay. Jax is there. Jax ganking. Trying to mess up Tristana. Ornn even here. Okay, that's just a little too many people. With Ornn there as well. So Tristana will go down. But if it just was Jax, it wouldn't even have been a problem. She... Well, still a problem, but nothing that couldn't be taken care of. Tristana would have been able to just jump out and would be fine, right? Okay, so after respawning, Tristana goes back to bot lane because, of course, the wave is pushed in. And bot lane tower fell, which is a little awkward after that lead, but it's ultimately no big deal. She can push the wave so fast and then rejoin her team. It is debatable. I mean, okay, you're so far ahead, you could just push it all the way in and take the tower, but usually, I mean, what you tend to do in most games, you push up to this rock and then roam, because as the tower is no longer there, you don't really have that safety, and that's just the safest macro play. And yeah, now in mid lane, you push past river. Simple and straightforward. Just create good pressure on the map overall, and what's happening here? Alright. Yeah, they're too late to defend this tower, effectively. This fight is, of course, also very good for Tristana. She can just jump in. The enemy needs to scatter. Yeah, Lux Laser, kind of a desperate attempt. It's a low cooldown, but still. Shouldn't waste it like that. Yeah, this mid lane tower is... What was that? Is not really defendable. Yeah, there we go. Now they fall apart. She needs to flash out. Mid lane tower falls. The pressure is just so high. And, I mean, yes, the rest of the team are doing well too, but just the bot lane dynamic, as we saw, the Nautilus Tristana, the early game a little awkward, but after the first reset, after she gets boots, can dodge the skill shots, bait the all-ins, it's kind of nutty. That's risky. I would not dare to do this. Because if Jax has flash... Okay, I mean, Tristana has the advantage of possessing 2 different disengage spells, one being her W, the other one being her ultimate, so she can get away with stuff AD carries should not get away with. Wait for the counter-strike, then jump forward. And, of course, you jump not directly into Jax's melee range, but kind of like parallel, so you're not on top of him, but next to him, so you can attack him, but he can't attack you. I mean, common sense, but still important to point out. And of course you wait until the counter-strike is on cooldown. So, yeah, Tristana effectively getting away with murder there. I almost broke into a cold sweat as she just approached the Jax next to his Wraith camp. Anyway, also Tristana very good at farming the jungle camps. It's something, especially Lethality Misfortune struggles with a little bit, because she buys lifesteal so late. She has limited resources in terms of attack speed and mana. So taking the Wraith camp, for example, or the Krags on Misfortune with a Lethality build that I currently play, feels kind of bad. But Tristana, she can just farm whatever. She doesn't really mind fighting multiple enemies? No, neutral monsters at once due to the AoE damage. And yeah, now the core build is complete. She has Kraken Slayer and Navori Quick Blades, and this is truly the point in the game where Tristana goes wild. It's... I mean, Navori... Well, Infinity Edge is always nice on auto-attack based marksman with a good range, but Quick Blades is so much better on Tristana, not only due to her E damage, but especially because of that cooldown refund, as I've already said during the guides part. It's almost an attack speed item, because you can just have your Q at all times. Yeah, the flank from Tristana, jumping straight into melee range. But at this point, yeah, it's not even a commitment, because you just get your jump back. So even should something go wrong, you still have that escape tool. Need to wait out Jack's counter-strike. Yeah, approaching a Jax as an AD carry always feels very sketchy. Looks like a dead Tristana. Yeah, but it was close. Again, and she did a lot of damage before she died. But even on Tristana, you can't get away with absolutely everything. If you fool around too much, you will still die. But I mean, if you feed away a shutdown, it might not be worth. However, if especially in more even games, if you deal enough damage in the teamfight before going down, waste enough of the enemy's resources, it's still okay to go in knowing that you might die, if you can guarantee that you apply your damage still, because that's obviously better than not participating in the teamfight at all. But yeah, Tristana respawning didn't really get any item upgrades, but I mean, she got a long sword. And let's have a look here. 1600 damage on Kraken Slayer, that's already quite nasty, but Tristana just uses the items so well, so not the biggest surprise there. Caitlyn, on the other hand, on Stormrazor for the hit and run playstyle. But, I mean, Caitlyn is getting outmatched insanely hard this game, especially because Tristana can also match her in terms of teamfight presence. She has 621 attack range already. Caitlyn has 650, so we're getting close. We're getting on Caitlyn levels, almost. Still need a little bit more levels. In the very late game, you will even outrange Caitlyn by a little bit, but yeah, at this point the range difference is so marginal. Tristana can effectively position like a Caitlyn in a teamfight, just with way better mobility. Okay, that's the hook, and that's the sign. You just jump in there, kill the Y, and after that pick, the enemy can't really hope to make anything. It's 7-20. The gold graph looked not as steep on the replay page, but yeah, here we are. Typical Tristana snowball game after all. Yeah, at this point you just play front to back. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Mordekaiser looks dead. Oh, what a save. Jumps over. Okay, I mean, it looked like a nice attempt, but ultimately it was not worth it. Okay, this is why the gold graph didn't look as steep, feeding away a shutdown here and there. And now Tristana finished her Lord Dominic's regards, making her impossible to ignore, even for tanks. I mean, if you look at Ornn, what does he have? He has Leviathan and Sunfire Aegis. Not the most armor. Can we have a look how much armor he has? 170. So, I mean, it's still quite high. Actually, it's very high. So 170 plus 5k health. But, okay. We'll have to rewind here. I said I wouldn't, but want to see what Tristana does. I mean, it's just a classic. Jump forward. In this case, cleanse the CC and finish them off. With exhaust, it's pretty much the same. You jump forward, and while jumping, you press exhaust, so they can never get away and not even fight back. But yeah, 170 armor and 5k health. That's quite the statement. Teamfight already started, but Hwai is not there and Tristana is approaching. Yeah, gets a cleanup on Caitlyn, gets the double jump. Super Mario 64. Yeah, that's kind of rough for the enemy team. She cleans up so effectively with her resets. And this 3-item power spike, not even a 5k 170 or 5k health 170 armor tank will be able to ignore your damage. You can just stand there, kite around with your attack speed. You always have your jump if they manage to get on top of you. And you just gun them down with Kraken Slayer, Lord Doms, and Navori Quick Blades. It's so oppressive to play against. As a tank, you don't really want to face this Tristana, for sure. And this is the thing, she's an early game bully who still slaughters tanks later on. I mean, okay, Kalista can do that too, but if Kalista doesn't snowball, kind of awkward. And yeah, that's a Baron. And that's the thing, you always have to take the objectives, and Tristana does this so efficiently. Her E, her Q. Especially Q with Quick Blades, Perma Q with Kraken Slayer. But yeah, here we see Tristana not going for Phantom Dancer right away, probably because, I don't know, I guess because she's snowballing. But I personally, and even in these situations, I still just always go for Phantom Dancer. I think it's such a valuable item. And Tristana, funnily enough, uses lifesteal a little worse than other AD carries, because she, well, in the very late game, she of course uses it very well due to auto-attacking a lot with high damage and high AD. But in the early game, a lot of her damage is just her combo with her E, or in the mid game even. And your E explosion, of course, does not apply lifesteal at all. So you're just better off getting more damage first before you invest in lifesteal. And I, again, also really like the consistency Phantom Dancer brings to the table. And the rank 1 player also goes for Phantom Dancer 4th in most games. In the overwhelming majority, that is. But yeah, saying no to a BF sword, I mean, I can understand. If you have the money for it and you feel like, okay, there's probably one last push and then we win the game, yeah, the F-Sword is just a stronger component compared to Zeal. And it also looks like this is exactly what happens. Red team beautifully converted the early game. I mean, Tristana played carefully at first when she had to, and then took full advantage once the enemy started making mistakes, snowballed the game from there. Very consistent solo queue strategy. But let me know what you think, especially of this segment of the video. And for more AD carry content, educational content, click the link on your screen.